Okay, well it started about 30 years ago. We kicked off really in a 6 foot by 4 foot shed in a garden. We still got the shed actually. It was successful probably based on a couple of things. One is we didn't come from a NHS physio background. My background is forces. I did a lot of physical training instruction in the forces. Got my degree while I was in the forces, so lots of things happened to me while I was in there.
My father started things off. He originally individual fitness consultants, and then my father qualified as a physiotherapist.
Our specialisation is as a sports clinic. You know, most of our stuff revolves around that ethos of sport rehabilitation. In the early days we spent some time at Bath Rugby Club when Bath Rugby was amateur. They weren't that fit at the time. They are fit now, of course, they weren't then. Well, 30 years ago, you never saw anybody punching focus mitts as fitness. Well, we were using those back then. And the philosophy of the business grew and widened, so with different things we brought in. But we see people from all walks of life. We see Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ME, stroke victims, road traffic accident issues, all sorts of things. And so we're wider and bigger than we've probably ever been.
I started out with helping out in the gym and taking people around doing gym inductions, and I started doing more and more and more really. So I've come through a slightly different route to a lot of other physiotherapists in the sense I didn't go straight into academia. I recently qualified as a physio, but for about 10 years before that I was a sports therapist, so vocationally trained.
So bringing Matt into the business, you know, he's gone through the degree as it is now, and he can tell the positives and negatives of that. Bearing in mind that he's been around this since he was that big. There are pictures of him. You know, he's been around training all his life.
And I often hear a lot of people saying they couldn't stand to work with their parents or their family, but for me it's great. I've learned an awful lot from him. I think it's fair to say that Dad, although he keeps up with modern methods and abilities, he is a little bit old school as well, which I like.
It's a bit like a farmer, having the farmer's son. He's grown up with the cows, he's grown up with the business. His education has been focused. We've been with a competitor for 25 years. DJO were more helpful, more accommodating, and we felt they listened to what we wanted. You know, that was the key thing really.
But we pride ourselves on having a much broader range of equipment and facilities. We've made a big investment into the business, in particular shockwave therapy, which is a really exciting modality, really good with what otherwise are quite difficult problems to deal with. And we've got a nice big powerful shortwave machine as well, which can help us to deal with a wider variety of problems than our old equipment, including osteoarthritis in the hips and the knees. With the help of you know, people like Cliff Eaton and Professor Tim Watson, we want to incorporate an evidence-based approach to that wherever possible, really.
Professor Tim Watson is probably the foremost gentleman on medical electrotherapy, probably not just in the country, close to the world probably. He does a lot of research at the University of Hertfordshire. His research is second to none. He brings in new stuff, shows us new things. So we are absolutely on the front end of this medical electrotherapy. Well, I'll call it revolution because it's moving on very quickly. The thing with Matt is, well, he's grown up around me all his life, so he's going to get all the madness, but I hope he's also got some of the common sense stuff as well. That being that chip off the old block a little bit works well.
There is a great deal of satisfaction in returning people to function and getting them moving again. You can see that that really does make a difference to their daily lives.